On behalf of the Said Business School at the University of Oxford, I want to say thank you to you all for having us here in Dubai, and wanted to tell you a little bit about who we are. Said Business School's mission statement is to be the premier global business school in a world-class university addressing world-scale challenges. So it's particularly resonant for us to be here in Dubai for the World Government Summit and to get to speak with you all about how governments will need to be designed and how they will need to be changed for the next 10, 20, or 50 years to meet those challenges. First, our thesis. We believe that the successful governments of the future will equip cross-sector leaders to build and operate networked organizations. The operative points there are that it's about the leaders and the organizations. We cannot possibly know what the future holds. We know that it will hold change, it will hold disruption, and we can prepare our minds, our people, our structures of our organizations to address them head on. So first, we'd like to review what we've heard here at the World Government Summit. From Elon Musk just yesterday, he told us that we can't possibly forecast 50 years out, can't possibly have any accurate predictions about the future. So we take away from that it's about a prepared mind and a prepared sense of adapting to change and having the tools and resources at your disposal. Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum highlighted, in addition to the head of the UN, the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement to solve the world's most critical challenges at the intersection of the public, private, and social sectors. And finally, His Highness has told us that the full potential of the UAE, its government, and the wider region will depend on the training in management and administration among the young leaders of today who will lead government tomorrow. Second, we'd like to look at structural shifts in the world. What is the world telling us today such that we can anticipate how governments will need to be designed to deal with those macro challenges? Unquestionably, we're in an era of multipolar competition. Long gone are the days of the Cold War, of US dominance, and I say that as an American. We're in an era of multipolar competition where the winners and losers will depend on who can build the strongest alliances, who can persuade the most number of organizations and peoples and sectors, and who can trade, invest, and build together, much as the UAE and India are today. We also hold that the future of government will be a competition for foreign direct investment. Now, why is that? It varies country to country, but the theme is clear. No singular country today has the cash resources, the natural resources, the human resources to not innovate and to not compete with each other. You look at the Gulf countries, and there's a pivot away from petroeconomies, investments in human capital to adapt. You look at the United States or Japan, there's local indebtedness at the household, personal level. All of those mean that in an era of low productivity growth, which is what we forecast for the next 10 or 20 years, that competition and growth will be based on drawing investment, new resource allocation from abroad. That has implications for how leaders will need to look and how they will need to work. And third, though it pains probably all of us to say, there's a secular rise in geopolitical volatility, thanks in no small part to these two gentlemen. What that means is that countries are going to need to be better networked with each other to adapt, to communicate, and to diffuse problems before they erupt into larger, damaging events. All of this outlines a fundamental problem with the way governments are structured today. It is a design challenge that's basically been a problem since Westphalia. That is that our problems over time are increasingly interconnected, whether it's financial markets, environment, terrorism, cybercrime. But the reach for our governments are legally confined to their own jurisdictions. There's a solution, though, and it's a soft power. It is multi-stakeholder engagement across the public, private, and social sectors and into other people's territories and countries in a positive and collaborative way. We'll come back to this. This brings us back to our thesis. We believe that the future of government will have cross-sector leaders in networked organizations. We look first at competencies. Among the competencies we think are most relevant are advocacy, capital, and technology. I'll go into depth on each of those. And second, the networked organization is not something in the distant future. There are pilot projects at any government, including the UAE, at the federal level or local municipal levels, could undertake right now to get started. First is stakeholder engagement, advocacy. We too often presume that just because someone works in government, they're actually good at politics. They're actually good at persuasion, coalition building, engaging and listening, that they have the empathy required to build outcomes that they can get agreement on. These are two exemplary stakeholder engagement frameworks from the private sector, which is particularly good at stakeholder engagement. They are particularly good at lobbying and building coalitions in ways that governments will need to catch up to. Second, capital. Governments are no longer bureaucratic organizations. Government leaders will need to be rainmakers. Government leaders will need to know how to communicate with the private sector. They will need to know how to prioritize investment sectors. They will need to be ambassadors for projects and understand the project level finances. And third, technology. Most of us are not coders and will not be coders, but we will need to know how to work with teams of specialists to create adaptable and fluid and flexible solutions to deal with the increasing dislocations at the local level. One example would be, hypothetically, in the United States, if you had a worker laid off at GE Appliance Park in Louisville, Kentucky, who gets a job at the Spartanburg, South Carolina plant for BMW, that person will need to retrain. Massive online open courses are an opportunity for governments to fill that gap and help people move quickly into the next opportunity. This brings us to government as an organization. Governments are seen as bureaucratic, as monolithic, as siloed, in most part because they are. If you look at the advents in terms of human capital and models in the private sector, and even very disruptive organizations, including certain terrorist organizations, there's a move towards flexible models.
Thank you, Oxford.
Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.